Afternoon, Jeff. It feels like another. Yeah, congratulations on the guppies, and it does feel a bit like a Groundhog Day. Yeah, it's somewhere along the line I ended up organising 5 online meetings in the space of 7 days. So it's almost one a day at the moment. But it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to a young man that first presented at one of the main Mastermind groups. He did a 3 and a bit hour session. Been last September time, Luke, was it?
Yes.
It's just the world seems to have gone
I
strange. But
don't
anyway,
know. It's a
Luke,
couple of years since this whole thing started, isn't it? It feels like
yeah,
that.
so Luke has presented to both groups, done a stunning job on both groups. And then when the coronavirus situation kicked off, Luke contacted me to say that he would be delighted to offer some support to my community and share some of the stuff that he knows around digital marketing. And as always with Luke, he wants to deliver value and content rather than what Luke is looking to share. So hence the question and our ability to provide the information that you actually want as opposed to the information that we think you want. So I am very excited myself to go through this process. And as always, I shall get lots of action points myself. So it was September. Mark says it was September. It seems like a lifetime ago.
He's got a good memory. I trust him.
As always, I'm going to let Luke loose and fire away. So a virtual round of applause for Luke.
It's deafening. It is deafening. Thank you very much for having me along, guys. And yeah, I hope everybody's doing okay. I know some really, really challenging times, and I hope today there's some ideas to take back to the businesses to, again, help us all get to the kind of the recovery stage a little bit kind of quicker. That's certainly the purpose of the content that we'll be talking today. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen, and hopefully you can all see that one. I'm just going to move this over. Yeah, what you'll see, guys, as well is in the chat, there's my colleague James Enderby there. He's going to be posting some links as we go along. Can you see my screen? I'll just double check and someone just say yes in the chat. That would be great. Cool. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate that. Great. Yeah, just because I can't see any faces. So as I said, as we go along, feel free to use the chat, because I think one of the challenges that we have as speakers in the kind of the digital and virtual world is obviously normally we read the room and we can kind of gauge smiles and laughter and all those sorts of things and rapturous applauses. That doesn't happen much, but yeah, we can all dream. When it comes to the virtual presentations, is difficult, so do feel free to get involved with the chat. Any questions, comments, etc. We may not deal with them straight away, but we'll come back to them certainly at the end, because we've got quite a large Q&A section as well. So this is a quick rundown of some of the models that we've been using as a business. For those of you who don't know, I run a digital marketing agency called Sleeping Giant Media. We focus on paid search, SEO, and social. So it's all about how we get relevant traffic to our clients' websites. We're quite fortunate in a way, because we get a good kind of view across the market, because we do see lots of different business types, how they're behaving, how they're reacting, and we have to develop plans and strategies for all of them. So we've got some ideas that we wanted to share with you as we go along. And this is just a quick talk to highlight some of the key points. So this is me. If you want to connect on LinkedIn, I think the guys are posting some links in the chat, so feel free to do that. We're pushing out loads of content and hopefully some good ideas to inspire you, keep you focused on the right things to be doing during these time periods. And it's always nice just to say hello. So do connect if you're around on LinkedIn. What else is there to do these days? Anyway, so this is what we were like. We're all on brand. We're all in office, and cracking on. Then the world goes crazy. Then it's more like this, the home office. That was when I had a haircut. It's now getting slightly out of control. Then you'll see a lot more of this. Does everybody remember the BBC interview where the kids walked in and it went crazy and that went instantly viral? I mean, that's like a daily occurrence nowadays. It's just kind of what we deal with. So, and this is my speculation. So on day 150, because my partner isn't a barber or a stylist, I potentially will come out of lockdown like this. If you haven't got involved with Snap Camera, so if you want to spice up your Zoom calls, Snap Camera, James has just posted that in the chat. You can add filters that you would use on Snapchat. So if you just want to have a crazy hat, look like that, or like I do with a beard, get involved, keeps it a little bit more lighthearted. You can surprise people, but there are a lot of mistakes when you forget to switch the filters off and you don't realize that. That's quite embarrassing. Just a heads up on that one. So what I want to do is kick things off with a virtual icebreaker. So for those of you who were at my the physical talk when I'm in the room, we do the stand up or the hand up game, and it goes a little bit like this. What we're going to do is just play for fun. There's normally a prize, and I don't know, Mark, did you win one? I think Mark won one in the past. He's pretty good. His memory is pretty solid, I have to say. But I'd like you to choose one or two and just type that in the chat. And if you get it wrong, you're out, and we move to the next one. So in the last 30 days around the world, have more people searched for the term toilet roll or hand soap? What do we think? 1 for toilet roll, 2 for hand soap. There we go, chat. Good work, chat. I'm loving this. We're all still awake. That's always a strong start. Post lunch. Okay, good. And the correct answer is hand soap. So when we started this off, I wrote this talk nearly a month ago. I had literally lost track of time, maybe 3 weeks ago. Let's say 3 weeks ago. And it was in fact toilet roll. And obviously things have changed as well as we move to the different phases. So it is now hand soap. We move on to the second one. In the last 30 days around the world, have more people searched for lockdown, number 1, or isolation, number 2? What do we think? Can I help? That is not a correct answer right now. But you can help. I'm sure you can. Everyone can. Right. The correct answer is lockdown. And again, it's interesting as well because what we can use, and I think it was one of the questions actually that someone posted pre-session, was around Google Trends and whether it's a good source of information. I'll say it is a good source of information because you can actually get a feel for where search trends are changing. Because again, the understanding language that people are using at the moment is really important because it will help you to tailor your messaging, not just marketing, but all the messaging that you do, to have a better chance of actually reaching them and connecting with them as well. So I would definitely keep a kind of ear out for that. You can use Google Trends, but just in the daily conversations that you have with people, the thing that's going around at the moment is Zoom fatigue. That is the next thing. Whoever thought we'd be talking about Zoom fatigue 2-3 weeks ago? I mean, it was all suddenly about Zoom. As we move on to the next one, which one was most searched for the last 30 days? Google Hangouts or Zoom video communications? Yes, still here. Everyone's still here. Good. That's all right, Machine. Don't worry. It's all good. Yes, Zoom. I think everybody's pretty much got it. Yeah, I think the share price went up by 30% overnight, and it's interesting because as I mentioned a moment ago, we're now not a fan of Hangouts, poor quality. Yeah, I think they only push out a 720p as well. So there's different qualities between those different video chats. Actually, Skype's pretty good, but a bit clunky sometimes. So we'll find that this will then change as well as people kind of get bored of one. There's conversations around, should you have your cameras on? Should you have your cameras off? Because again, should you ask your teams to do that or not? So we're in kind of interesting times where things are changing all the time. And I kick that game off, number 1, because it checks that everybody's in a room. But also it's really important to remember that what was working for us in marketing may now not be working for us. So those search terms that everybody was focusing on may now not be searched for at all. And what you'll find is that there will be completely new search terms that are featuring that you've never thought of, because obviously we've never been in this situation before, that are now top of those lists and actually getting a lot of traffic. Obviously things like clap NHS workers wasn't a thing. It wasn't a thing. It now is a thing. And we have to then understand what is changing in our environments to be there to try to answer the new questions that customers have and potential clients have as well. So it's really trying to understand what is changing and trying to be there to help add value in those moments. So to help do that, what we've done is we've created a curve. And now, as a marketing agency, we look at models and we try to understand which is the most relevant model to help try to explain relatively complex situations to clients and to our team, to make sure that we can deliver value and deliver a good service. And the trouble is that because it is a pandemic, everything that we were previously doing doesn't necessarily work because of the fact that it's all new. So I was looking at this, and this is a curve that was originally created by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. It's around sort of major changes, so transitional change. And often you'll have probably heard of it in the grief space. So if you look at the reaction section, there's shock, denial, anger, fear, acceptance, commitment. So those are the stages that we go through when there's either a major change or for example, if you're experiencing loss or grief. Those are the kind of stages that we kind of inevitably go through. And we move that into the pandemic trend curve because actually it feels like this is probably the most relevant model that we can all use at the moment to understand our current situation. And we just changed those points to discovery, realization, panic, normalizing, recovery, and new world. And I think it's really important because by understanding where we are now, we have a much, much better chance of being able to understand what we can do in the current moment, but also what we can do in the next stages of the funnel. In the next stages of the curve. Now, so just looking at the curve in itself, so discovery, that's a point where we all heard about it, but it wasn't really anything that was going to impact us directly. The realization stage, when suddenly, we were like, oh, okay, this is pretty serious. This is going to affect us. And again, the timelines we're talking about here, we're probably talking 7-8 weeks ago for discovery, 6 weeks ago for realization, 4 or 5 weeks ago for panic, some of us longer as well, depending on the different businesses. And focusing on panic, when I talk about panic, that is for some businesses, and you guys might be, some of you might be in this space where you can't work remotely. Like that in itself for a lot of businesses was a complete nightmare to try to get to kind of, logistically deliver the service that they're supposed to do remotely. For us as a business, not so much a problem. We're based in Kent. We're on the M20, so we were anticipating a bad Brexit. Who would like to talk about Brexit right now? That would be a change of pace, wouldn't it? Whoever thought that would be a nice change of pace to talk about Brexit? But anyway, we anticipated not being able to get to our office for a while because of the potentially everything spilling back on the M20. So everyone had laptops, and we can move into a remote world really, really quickly. But our clients totally different, and we lost a number of clients very, very quickly. I think we lost 24% of revenue in 3 days, and then we've lost a further, I think it's between 10 and 15% of revenue over the following 2-3 weeks. So we could see that kind of instant kind of panic where a lot of businesses are kind of just looking to cut costs, and then they're looking to stabilize. The fortunate thing to say is that actually, we then move into the kind of the normalized phase. So what I would say for you guys is there's 2 things you can do with this curve. Number one is it helps you understand where you are, okay? And understand that there will be different phases that will come up. So there's obviously the normalized phase, and I think most of us are in that. We're hearing a lot more now around new normal. That's the kind of the buzzword that's going around at the moment, because we're now all used to working at home. And ironically now, that new normal brings on problems like Zoom fatigue, because we're so used to this normal situation that we're now not even worried about Zoom itself. We're worried about the fact that it causes fatigue. And then we move into recovery and eventually the new world. So what we wanted to do, I'll come back to that in a second. What we need to do is we wanted to create this curve to help our businesses that we're working for and people we're talking to understand where they are, but what they are going to experience next, and start thinking about how they can be there to answer the right questions in the normalized, seek any opportunities in recovery, and also into the new world as well, because there will be new opportunities. We are wrapping all of this content under a mindset called the restart up mentality, because you're going to hear a lot of people being quite negative, and I totally get that as well. That, don't get me wrong, I totally understand this is really, really tough, and some businesses are really struggling. But we really want to try to be positive about the opportunities and looking at this from a restart up mentality. So looking at this from an opportunity to reinvent, new thinking for a new world. That is how we want to focus on this, because it's a really good opportunity for businesses to press the reset button on what they're doing and completely reinvent themselves, and not cling on to what was, but focus on how they could be better and more relevant in a new world. And you can use this model to better understand what you can do in those different stages. You'll see the secondary curve that's kind of coming off the primary curve. That is just a flag as well, just to keep an eye out for any major significant changes that are likely to happen. So what happens here, for example, is that if you go through furloughing or unfurloughing, that could then spark off a new curve where the people in the business or out of the business will go through the discovery, realization, panic, normalized, recovery, and new world in that situation again. So the other thing to take away from this is think about what those major changes will be. And it's going to be interesting. I think it's the 8th of May. We're going to hear an update from the government on where we're at. That might well spark off another curve as well, because there might be some changes to what happens next that some significant changes in the business, and we can kind of theorize as to what they might be, so we're better prepared as and when those changes happen. Now, excuse the slightly blurry imagery that you will see here, but another tool that might be useful for you guys to have a think about is this, which is what we're calling the revenue trajectory curves. Is based across our client base. We can see, to a degree, 4 types of clients and 4 types of revenue decline or increase. So you've got the blue line, which is the hard hit. So that's your kind of holiday companies, airport parking businesses, who else was it? Estate agents, for example. Overnight, the market doesn't exist. Everything kind of drops, and their challenge, their problem is going to be survival. Absolutely. Then you move into the black line, which is what we feel we are. So that's what we call the UV curve. It could be a U shape, it could be a V shape, and that's where you have part of your business has dropped off, but some of it has remained. So you've got kind of some sections working well, some bits not. Then you move on to the green. That's like your overnight success. That's your sort of anti-back hand creams that went obviously suddenly crazy in those situations. And then you've got the yellow curve, which we call the new normal, where suddenly they've got a product that has now become more relevant in the current world that we're sort of operating in. And that will be things like garden equipment, home gym equipment, things like that, where people are kind of isolated and they're in the new normal situation. Now, as I said, these are really, really tough times for everybody. I totally get that. And if you said to yourselves, how is this year compared to last year? The answer is probably going to be disastrous for most of us. But the point is that we actually have to look at this in relative terms. So we have to look at this in comparison to our competitors, because for most of us, hopefully, we're all going to get through this. It's just a question of how we're going to get through this. And we can choose to carry on doing what we're doing and what we've always done. And you'll probably follow the solid line. You'll follow the solid line through that curve. So taking the black line, you'd follow that line down and then follow it up as the market recovers and then as things go into kind of new world. The question that I would pose, and the challenge and I think the opportunity that we all have, is how we find the dotted line for each of those trajectory curves. Because some of you might be on some of those different curves based on the different types of businesses you have and the sectors in which you operate. So the question will be, how do you find your way back to those dotted lines? And that, I think, can be done by understanding where you are on the pandemic curve and how you can plan for what happens next. And if you can do that better than your competitors, you've got a much better chance of hitting the dotted lines than you have on the solid lines, and focusing on speeding up your recovery and trying to move that line as close to the vertical as you possibly can. Okay, so that's the focus of the work that we have been doing. And as we finally then move through into the new world, the key word that you really need to focus on, so that the question you need to focus on would be relevance. So it's, how can we make our businesses more relevant in the new world? And for example, I do lots of speaking engagements, but I can't see myself doing any speaking engagements for quite a while, because again, there's going to be significant, I suspect, social distancing for a while. But I've done more talks in the last 2 weeks than I've done in the last 2 months, and I've met more people in that time period because I was able to put the ideas that we've been working on down and get that idea out there. We're running live shows, and we're doing loads of different things that we didn't do before, but we're having to embrace and think about what will be relevant. Because I think, again, a lot of the stuff that we're doing, that we've done very quickly to move into now, will also still be something that we have to plan to do in the new world, because I don't envisage networking events running the way that they did, before, because until there's a vaccine, I think there's just going to be significant impact on it. So we just need to think about what that new world will be like, what behaviors will change, and how can we make our businesses more relevant. So to help you do that, these are the 3 questions that I would prompt, and I would strongly recommend doing this exercise, yourself or with your teams. We've done it, myself and my business partner, and we've looked holistically across the business to say, what could we be doing? What behaviors will likely change? So we're going to obviously have impact both on our client level, but also on our team level as well. So there's going to be question marks around how that's going to impact those guys. And then what that impact will be on my business, and where are the opportunities. So every single time you list an impact, you then list an opportunity, because that's the restart mentality that we're talking about, that focus on the opportunities. And I don't think and there was another question that I've been asked a number of times is it okay to talk about opportunities in these times? I wouldn't necessarily be shouting about it externally, in the sense of I wouldn't be talking about it from if you're a B2C type business, but in a B2B world, we all kind of have to focus on opportunities, because if we don't focus on opportunities, what are we going to focus on? It's really, I think it's a choice of how we decide to look at this. It's either a problem or it's an opportunity. It's a Christ-opportunity, as one of my guys would say, to try to find the positivity in this situation. And I think that by doing that, everybody comes out quicker and stronger. So to give an example of what that kind of looks like, for us, and again, just an example of how to use those 3 questions, is the client's use and acceptance of technology. 3 months ago, we were all set up at the office for video conferencing, have been for ages. We can't get loads of our clients to use video conferencing because they'd rather face-to-face, and I get that, and to a degree we would as well. But at the same time, you don't need to do face-to-face all the time, particularly for the long, for really long distance stuff. I think that is going to obviously change. It has instantly overnight. Everybody is able to understand this technology, or pretty much understand this technology, and so suddenly the acceptance of that within the day-to-day going forward will be significant, because people won't focus so much on the travels. So what we need to then do is be leaders in using video conferencing for pitches. In case of you wondering, this backdrop, this was, if you check out my LinkedIn, I can show you what it looked like before. This is my parents' bedroom. We have a house where they've got one section, we've got another section. They're stuck in Corfu. I've messaged them to give them the heads up that I have turned their bedroom into a filming studio, because I expect that we're going to be here for a while. And I nicked some paint from work so I could paint the wall. They're going to be super excited about that. But the reason is that actually at the moment, you guys can all see me, and your impression of me isn't about what I was like in the room when you met me before, but it's what you're seeing now. It's how I'm coming across. It's how my sound quality is, and things like that. And I think there's a thought process required for you guys as well, for when you have client meetings, that you've got to think about the impression you're delivering to your clients, which is now not going to be done face to face. It's not going to be the kind of the interactions that you had, the ability to read body language, all those sorts of things. But it's now about how well you can do video conferencing as well. So there's a kind of a feature there. And James has just posted in there our guide to great video conferencing and how to look professional. So it's just some tips in there, guys, if you want to check that out. The other thing, as I mentioned, is teams not wanting to be in the office. I think in Germany, they've made it a legal right. If you can work from home, the employer doesn't have to can't force you to come into the office. You're able to say, look, I want to work and stay at home, and that's just the way it is. That's something I saw a couple of days ago, and it's gonna be interesting to see what happens when lockdown is removed, how keen people are to be in an office, because actually for me, I love the office. I love doing our presentations, so we've got 56 people. I love those kind of face-to-face kind of meetings. But what happens, because we can't do those are the bits that I'm going to miss, then we're not going to be able to do them anyway. So I think we're going to look at then how can we use remote technology to promote remote culture, mental health, etc. And again, there's some resources there as well. Actually, and James, there's a dedicated page for Socks Up Simon guys as well. So if you can dig that one out and post that in the chat, there's a kind of a link to some of the resources as well. On those pages that James will find the Socks Up Simon version, you will find a link to a document like this, which is what I'm talking about, the new world planning stage, where you'll have some behaviors that we've identified that we think might change. Those are just literally myself and business partner putting some ideas down. It's not comprehensive by any means, so that feel free to expand on that. But then you can apply those change behaviors through to error there. Hold on, James, come on, man, up your game. And then apply those change behaviors to those different pieces of context, the technology, travel, etc., and how they're going to impact it, which will then feed into filling in the form around the behaviors, what the impact will be, how big that impact's going to be, and helping you to set some actions for what you do next as well. That is the main bulk of it for me, guys. The other thing I was going to say is that we're pushing out loads of content. If you are hosting things, i.e. you're putting some content on for your clients and you're looking for someone from a digital perspective, just let me know. Obviously, if you liked what I've been talking about now, it's something I'm happy to deliver to some of your clients if that's of use. Also, this is the other thing that we've been doing. We're featuring a special guest. Don't know when he's coming on though, because he's such a prima donna. He's just too difficult to tie down. Simon will be on the Business as Unusual show as well, so he'll be coming on, so I can quiz him about the challenges that he's been facing, and hopefully should be quite entertaining as well. So that is it from me, guys. I'm going to stop sharing now, move back to the camera, and I can then take any questions that you might have.
Brilliant. Thank you, Luke. Very informative. The question around whether team members will actually want to go back to the office or not is a really interesting one, because I think there's a feeling out there at the moment when you speak to most business owners that they're going to want to be at home. But the preliminary findings on the surveys is that's not true, that they actually want to get back into the office. And I'm sure I see some stats. You've given me an idea, but I'm sure I've seen some stats that 5 out of 7 people can't wait to get back into the office because they don't want to be at home looking at washing up.
Yeah,
the
and the kids. Yeah. Jason's just putting the chat around. Yeah, get away from the kids, and I can understand that
and all that sort of stuff. But I'll perhaps have a look at how we do that. Jason's just said that most of his want to get back to get away from the kids. So I'm now going to start firing questions at Luke. As I said, if you've got any questions that you would like to ask, then put them in the Q&A box or put them in the chat box, preferably in the Q&A box. We've got several come in already. So the first one from Adnam. Luke, if I was starting with digital marketing, and I know that's a broad subject in itself, but what's the first thing that I should be looking at? What's the first thing that I should be doing?
If it's the first thing you're looking to do, I think the first thing to remember is that it's digital marketing, and that in itself is quite misleading because it's digital, then it's marketing. And I would always say that you have to focus on marketing before going digital. So it's, again, it should be customer centric or client centric, and understanding the needs that your customer has firstly. So the first thing I would be doing is really trying to understand what your customers are or clients are looking for, what information they're seeking. And then from there, you then start taking the next step around what to do. I think in practical terms, one thing I would say is having a decent website, particularly in these times. And I say decent, it doesn't have to have like loads of features on it, but when James can find the correct link, he will post it on there. But what we've been doing a lot on recently is leaning on our website, because actually what we're able to do is we're able to put a lot of content on there and send people back to it. And that gives us a bit more control of the conversation so that it can introduce people to the brand. So I think, having a reasonable website where you can add new content, add new pages would certainly be the first step I would be looking at. And then it would be a case of how you then, the second step is how you then get that in front of the right people, and how do you increase the reach that you have.
Brilliant. Thank you. So Kay's just asked, can you put the Socks Up Simon resource page back in the in the chat box for us, please? So if the first step then, and you're leading me on, because I was going to start this conversation by saying these questions are all just going to come randomly, but you've kind of teed me up to the next question. On the blogs, so do a website and then add blogs to it. So A, do blogs work? And B, what should I blog about? What's the content?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting one. Hang on a second. James, what are you posting? James, I just sent you the link in chat, dude. Okay. You can't get the teams these days. I'm joking, James. I love you. So what would you do next if you got a blog? Firstly, I had a really interesting chat with somebody this morning. There's the Socks Up Simon link. Thanks, James. I had a really interesting chat with somebody this morning who makes cardboard. Okay. And I've never been more surprised in my life by this conversation, because I normally spend most of my time telling people to try to think outside, I'm going to say it, the box, of what they should be doing in terms of the content that would be interesting. And it's one of the first times ever where I've had somebody come to me and say, so I watched this program where this person builds houses out of bamboo. It's on Apple Plus. I haven't seen it, but it sounded really cool. And he's like, well, actually, our product is so good. It's so eco-friendly. We can build desks, we can build walls, we can build loads of stuff with this new product that only we sell. I want to set up a YouTube channel where I do this, where I do that, and I come up with all this kind of, and I was like, this is music to my ears, because what he's doing there is he's trying to take his product and build, and not focus necessarily on the direct sale, but he's focusing on the awareness piece. He's focusing on making it interesting, adding value to start new conversations. So I think having a blog and having content ideas like that is where to kind of go with this, because, you know, we could talk about digital marketing till the cows come home, and I'm sure you guys could talk about, you know, your topic areas till the cows come home. But the trouble is that they're not always that interesting. So it's like we have to find ways to connect with our customers, who are people, and understanding kind of creativity around that. So blogs are a fantastic thing to have on your website because they allow a lot more freedom with the content that you do. Your standard website should feature all of the functional content, the questions that you normally get asked, and you should have answers to those questions. But actually having a blog is, you know, is a great way to give you a bit more freedom of how to actually do that.
Brilliant, thank you. I've got your question, Neil, on Facebook ads, which is one that's for me as well. Sonetta's just said, James, that the URL for the Socks Up Simon is broken. But
what? I'm looking at it.
perhaps if you want to have a look at that, then that might be the
digital's the way forward, people. There's no problems with it.
The continuing theme, and it's just to show that Luke has probably set this up. So it's like at the end there's going to be a finale or something.
I wish. I'm not that clever.
So just while I'm on that, Jason's asked, how do you make sure that those blogs rank? So what do you do? It's how do you get it to the top of Google?
Yeah, so I mean, so it's really interesting. So for this this talk, Simon's provided me with a list of questions that you guys posted sort of pre-session, which is fantastic. And actually, that is the first thing to do. Understand the questions that people are asking you about your service offering. So what we're doing now, all the content that this is kind of generating, is fantastic for me to listen to then make sure that we have the content that sits on our website. So the first thing is, if you want to rank for something, make sure it's something that people actually are searching for. That's the first kind of rule, because if you're just answering random stuff, it's unlikely to get that particular cut through. Then you kind of have to rely on the SEO strength of your website, in the sense if you've been doing well from an SEO perspective already, you've got a better chance of that blog ranking well straight off the bat, because obviously it's taking the power from the main website. If you're brand new, if you've got a small website, if it's not something you've done before, it's going to take more time to kind of to get that traffic. The way that you can artificially kind of speed that process up is through social media. So posting those blogs. So once you've written a blog, and I see this a lot, people write a blog and they kind of put it on their website and it's great, but then they don't ever share it. But actually, the thing to remember with social media, just like this chat, is that it's got a timeline. You put something on it, then something else comes in, then something else comes in, and something else, and then eventually the bit that you posted, your original blog, has now disappeared from that timeline. So it's good to recycle that content as well, because we find that, you know, we've done lots of YouTube videos, done lots of content. They go in phases. Suddenly they're really relevant, and then suddenly we see a spike in viewership on a particular topic, because suddenly it's something that's come into focus for external reasons. So don't be afraid to reshare that blog post multiple times. The other thing I'd also say is that if you are able and up for it, is that if you write a blog and it does particularly well, look at how you can then repurpose that, because you could potentially then turn that into imagery. So you can take some snippets and kind of put those as graphics to use on social media, but you can then also turn it into a vlog as well. So if you've got the ability to use camera equipment, then it's a great thing to do, to turn that written content into video content without having to then reinvent the wheel. You don't have to think of another topic because you've already got a really good one there.
Brilliant, thank you. So at the beginning of that conversation, you said find out what people are searching for. How do I do that? I know it's probably a 6-day course, but
no,
it's simple tools.
Yeah, some simple tools. So so the first one I say would be AdWords. They've got a keyword tool in it. So even if you're not running AdWords, I would definitely recommend setting up an AdWords account. You don't have to spend any money at all with AdWords, but when you're in there, you actually then have access to their keyword planner tool, which will allow you to find out what people are searching for, and that will then give you a really nice start point. There's one called oh god, I always get this wrong. Is it Ask the Public? Answer the Public? I use it in my main session. Hang on. I'm going to Google it quickly. Yes, thanks, James. Oh, he's trying to make up for it. He's trying to make up for it now. Yeah, so that's answerthepublic.com. And in there, you can type in some keywords, and that actually queries the Google database, and it starts pulling out some some insights to the keywords that people are searching for. So those are two technical tools that you can absolutely do. But I think that the first thing, if you don't want to get too technical with it, would be listen to the questions that every single client asks you on a daily basis, because we've got loads. We know the questions that you guys have written down are fantastic questions, and that's my opportunity to listen to those, to then write content. So you can ask the questions to your clients. Pick up the phone, find out how they're doing. What are the questions that they have at the moment? I mean, there's probably quite a few around furloughing, deferring payments, tax. There'll be an absolute raft of financial questions that are going around at the moment. So really trying to get some insights that that you can kind of take to your niche, to your kind of offering from your existing client base, would be a really, really strong place to start. So I think it doesn't have to be fully sort of technical. I think it's just, really focus on just listening to the questions that people are asking you, and try to be there when they ask them online. So taking anything offline and transitioning that to your website.
Brilliant, thank you. And I'm conscious of the time, and I don't want to spend all the time on blogging, because I want to get onto LinkedIn and Facebook. Is there any particular blog site to use, or doesn't it really matter?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one. So I assume you mean things like Blogger and stuff like that. And actually what I straight away would say is that blogs, I would always have them on your website. So what I mean by that is you can easily go to something like wordpress.com, and you can set up a blog that will sit on their domain, and you can kind of link out from your site, your website, to their site. The downside to that is it doesn't really pass any value back to your content. So I would always host the blog on your domain. So on your www.yourdomain.com/blog. Okay. Because it just means that you've got a better chance of any content, any sort of traffic that comes in goes to your blog section, and then they go, oh, that's interesting. And then they can find their way to the homepage, etc. And any links that you get back to that blog. So any links that someone says, oh, they've said something interesting. For those of you who've got a baseline understanding of SEO, any link that comes from anyone else's site back to your site, so a backlink, that will pass value to your site. So if you've got the blog hosted on your site, those links coming back to your site will pass value to your whole domain, which ultimately improves your overall SEO performance. So I would always try and host it on your own domain.
Brilliant, thank you. And then just on the automation, you talked about posting it on social media. Obviously, there are lots of tools out there to automate those postings. Firstly, is that a good idea? And secondly, if it is, which ones do you use?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I would actually say that at the moment it's potentially a little bit risky, more risky than it has been historically, because this thing is moving so fast. If you've written a post that like a week ago sounded like a good thing to say, like sounded relevant, by the way that how quickly this is moving, it could be irrelevant, and it could also, hypothetically be offensive by the time that someone reads it, if it's kind of scheduled to post. I mean, that's an extreme version, obviously, but it's moving so fast that automation is probably a little bit tricky. And you can, things like Hootsuite, absolutely. Is a simple, basic one to use. And I actually to tie this into what questions should we answer, or in terms of the content we should write. Social media is a great place to listen. So you can use Hootsuite to monitor certain hashtags to then help you, to inspire you to understand what people are asking. So that can inform the content strategy. My advice around social media is it has to be authentic right now. I think if you're, now is a time to really focus on being like a human. It's really, really important that people get to understand that it's challenging for you, because I think there's some questions around, is it okay to talk about sales? I mean, yeah, it is, but it's also important to make sure that it's done in a really considerate way, that actually that you're that people understand that you're trying to add value at the same time. It's the same for us. Like, yes, absolutely, if anyone wants SEO, I'd love to help you right now, but at the same time I also have minimal expectations that people have the capability to do it right now. If you like what you're hearing, and in 6 months time, then great, then we're here. But that's my I want to give value, and I want to focus on giving value, and for me it's about being authentic and being honest, and saying, well, actually, yeah, we can 24% of our revenue in 3 days. It really hurt. We've furloughed 21 people, and we're dealing with challenges that I've never ever thought I'd have to deal with. But if I'm sending automated posts around, get involved, free SEO audits and stuff like that, I just don't think for me that would not hit the right note. So I think it's more about sharing, sharing the challenge, sharing the burden, sharing the ideas, and hopefully building relationships with people on a personal level, on an authentic level. And I think now's the time more than ever to focus on being human, and where possible using automation, but making sure it's in a way that doesn't, put you in the bracket of being kind of opportunist rather than helpful.
Spammy is a
Yeah, I think it's just really got to be really careful. I see a lot of it on LinkedIn as well, and it's kind of like, I think people will remember that. I think after this is all over in whatever format it will be, it's like, how do you want to be remembered? It's like, do you want to be the company that's out there really trying to help and put decent content together, or the ones that are focusing on really trying to push sales during this time period?
Yeah, no, my sort of reaction is when I see it, and very often it's obvious. It's like, if you can't be asked to post it yourself, why should I be asked to read it? That's the gut reaction that it provokes in me. But, so let's just move on to a bit of Facebook with Neil. What do you think about Facebook ads for accountants? I see marketeers pushing this, but my experience is that it's usually low value leads, unless you're targeting a specific niche that aligns with Facebook. So how do you feel about that, Luke?
Yeah, I think, again, it's this what are you trying to achieve with it? I think, everyone's, and again, I get it. I get, and a lot of the questions were focused on around leads. I totally get that. That's what we all want, I know. But I also think currently, we have to probably press the reset button on what our expectations are around what we're trying to achieve, because the way to get leads now is probably not by driving for leads. It's ironically focusing on that value proposition. It's that kind of decent piece of content that will then resonate. So I think that you're not wrong in the sense that Facebook can be a really tricky one. And I would also say that sometimes Facebook might be better utilized for the starting of conversations, to meeting new people, to almost being a little bit more. If you've got a personal brand, Facebook can be quite good at that. So you can talk a little bit more personally, and I don't know if it's something that you do, Simon, but it's a sort of platform where you can be a bit more personal. So I think it can be good, but I would certainly, at the moment, I would probably press the reset button. And for those of you who are familiar with the funnel, do you know the awareness, interest, desire, action, and that's the general kind of thought processes that we kind of go through in a purchasing decision. It's kind of slightly more complex in the B2B, but it follows a similar sort of principle. The way we've looked at this is that we would always recommend distributing your time across each of them, so awareness, interest, desire, action. But during this time, to a degree, we've removed our focus around the action, or the sort of the conclusion part of it, because a lot of people aren't going to be in the mindset to purchase. What we've focused on is that awareness and interest, which is why I'm here. Because actually, as I said, if I can add value right now, with little to no expectation of any direct sales coming immediately, but in 6 months' time, then you go, who was that bloke? He sort of looked like Chris Martin. What was that guy's name, Simon? And then you kind of go, get in contact, and then we can pick up the conversation. And that for, is kind of the reset that we have to take right now. Facebook can be really effective, but I would probably, again, not be focusing on lead gen too much. I'll be focusing on engaging and starting those conversations to, again, push them back to your website, to then help you filter out, good quality leads from the kind of the chat. Because again, you do get that as well, absolutely, because there's just so many people on these platforms. The thing to note, actually, on a stat wise, whilst I remember, is 80% of people are consuming more content on social media than they've ever consumed at the moment. So we're seeing massive increase, a 45% increase in social media usage at the moment, and we're seeing the cost for the clicks, so the cost for the Facebook clicks gone down by, I think it's something like 30%. So if you've got budget to spend, and you have a strategy that will work on Facebook, so i.e. you're probably focusing more on promoting content and almost sharing ideas, is a very good time to invest in it, because your budget will go a lot further right now than it would do in normal times.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. And just while I've got you then, and we're talking about Facebook, when you post something on a Facebook page, very often then Facebook comes along and gives you $5 or whatever it is in order to boost that post and promote it. So if that blog post is relevant, so it's not selly, it's providing information. Is it worth pressing that little button and investing your $5, or is that just a Facebook sort of ploy to get you to part with your credit card details?
It is both. It is 100% them trying to get you involved with that. But unfortunately, I think it's kind of it's a necessity at the moment. So you're finding this more. We found this more with all of the platforms, not just Facebook. So it's not just me kind of having to go at Facebook, but they developed an amazing platform, loads of content, and we used to put loads of organic content on there, and we used to kind of, on our own merit, get a decent amount of traffic because the content was kind of targeted and relevant, etc. Over time, they have reduced the value of organic content that sits on the platform to a degree, pushes you to have to use the paid elements. And this is, as I said, not just a Facebook thing. This is also the same for YouTube as well. So any YouTube content that you do, it's often important to run some paid advertising to give it that initial boost. And what then happens is you find that because then people watch it, and again, as long as it's decent content, it then starts to rank organically on its own right and its own merit. So then you kind of then get into the organic kind of rankings for YouTube, and the same for Facebook. It helps you then have a more successful organic feed because you paid to do it as well. So it's a bit annoying. But if there's an option to do it, it might be worth having a play with it. Because the other thing to say is that it isn't very expensive to do. Like the amount of reach you get by putting £5 behind it is pretty good as well. So I think it's worth experimenting with if you think you've got a good piece of content that will really connect with people.
Brilliant, thank you. And then Michelle, if I'm doing lots of videos on COVID-19, how do I get them out on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook? So what tips have we got in order to be able to get the videos shown?
Yeah, there's a lot of variables in there around like what existing audience that you have and other marketing channels that you use. I think assuming that you've got some sort of database, I mean, you can, emails, certainly sharing the email content. I think you go through all the marketing kind of fundamentals. So I think, the COVID-19 piece is that, so for example, every video that you do on YouTube, you get to choose a title. That is essentially your page title. That should be slightly keyword focused. So that should be helping people to find that content. So if you can change the page titles or the video title itself to be more targeted to the keywords that people are searching for, you might have a better chance of ranking organically in YouTube. As I just mentioned, probably putting a little bit of budget behind that to start with to kind of give it that initial boost, and then you should start kind of transitioning away from that potentially. Again, don't be afraid to reshare that content on social, because again, once you post it once, it will then disappear from the timeline. You can kind of post again. But again, it's little things. I think, putting stuff down in your email signature as well. Like, check out our content hub. That's always an interesting thing to do, because again, if you're emailing lots of people, you can do that. Make sure your team and your staff are aware of it. James, post the right link. I'm joking. But making sure that we've got we're briefing our teams to say, actually, if you need any help with stuff, here's our resources page. So, I think you've done the hard part. Creating the content is often the hardest part, because it takes some time. It takes some consideration to come up with some, I think, decent ideas, because you're going to find that the next challenge that we all face is that everybody pushes out loads of content, and that's okay at the moment because everybody's trying to grab stuff and listen to stuff and try to understand it. What happens when everybody pushes out the same amount of content? The ones that rise to the top will be the ones that have decent ideas, have decent quality. And so that's going to be the next challenge that we face. So I think you've done the hard part. It's now a case of looking at all the possible options that you can, leveraging your staff, leveraging your email, leveraging your database, and potentially putting some paid budget behind it to try to get that initial reach.
Brilliant, thank you. And then Mark's asked, is there a difference between the sort of instant fix and the evergreen blogs? So for me, now I'm thinking about it, it sounds like hard work, Luke. So I've got to keep generating content all of the time that's relevant in order for it to be top of the search terms. Is there a way that you can create something that sort of is an everlasting and evergreen type scenario? Now I'm saying that out loud, I don't suppose there is. I think it's got to be.
There will be. I mean, there'll be within those search terms. So going back to the pandemic curve, you've got the new normal, you've got the recovery, and you've got the new world phase. Those are kind of so we're probably in the normalization phase right now, most of us, and we're hopefully going to move into the recovery stage soon, and then eventually we'll move into the new world, whatever on earth that looks like. You know, if you focused on the content around the panic stage of the curve, and some people still might be in that stage, that's probably got a window of a week, 2 weeks. That's all we've got. Normalize, we could be in this for a month, 2 months. Recovery, that could be 6 months, that could be 12 months. And it will depend again on your different sectors. Like, you know, if you specialize in hospitality, that could be a longer curve. That could be a much longer return to a form of normality, and the normality it reaches won't be anything like the normality it was. So I think, you know, the curve, and the reason we've designed it the way we have is and almost can't talk in too much detail in a conference sort of situation like this, is because it's actually very unique to each of us. Like, our revenue trajectories will, you know, some of us will hit that curve quicker, some of us will hit it longer, and that might be down to us, but it might be down to external factors. The pandemic curve in itself will change. So I think, you know, for example, we have a number of travel clients, and some of them are hanging on. Please stay. That'd be really useful. And we have moved all of our content production and focus onto 2021. So booking holidays in 2021. The idea being is that'll be relevant for quite a while, and we're not having to keep on riding those short-term curves. It also depends on resources. So, you know, we're quite well equipped to turn stuff around, because it's kind of what we do. So we've been able to turn things around for the panic. We anticipated, we were supposed to be exhibiting at the London B2B in the Excel building. We were like, this is really, really unlikely. So we planned a couple of weeks in advance to run all of our content remotely. So we had all of our timing slots where we're doing speaking events, and we put them all on the website. And as soon as it closed, we then it was cancelled. We ran paid search advertising on B2B closed, B2B refund, so that they could drive to our site to then book in for the course. And we had more people that turned up in the virtual world than we would have had in the physical world. And we had zero competition because none of our competitors thought to do it. So it's things like that you can absolutely do the short-term thing. If you're quick enough, if you've got the resources to do it, it is hard work. But again, it's a question of those little things, and that restart up mentality might be the extra client that you get that moves you to the recovery stage a little bit quicker. And that for me this is why we were focusing on that restart up mentality, because it reminds me so much of when we started the business 12 years ago, where everything we do, we have no idea how it pans out. Everything is completely unknown, and we're going to fail, and we're going to fail fast, and then we're going to try something different. And that's exactly what we did 12 years ago. And I just encourage everybody to try to do exactly that, because I think if we can do those things and get that one client, that two client, that lead, those conversations of those businesses that you could never reach before this situation because everybody was too busy. You couldn't get hold of the marketing director or whoever you need, the finance director in those organizations. They're now probably more accessible than they've ever been. So this is a fantastic opportunity to try to start those seeds of recovery early, and focus on those bits of content, whether they're short term or whether they're long term. That will just depend on your understanding of what behaviors will change. So if you use the tools that we shared, that will help you both understand the short term things that you could do, but also some of the sort of longer, more evergreen based content.
Brilliant, thank you. And that B2B refund just fired off another idea for me.
Nice.
As well. Thank you very much. And it I imagine the cost per click of the word furlough was pretty much zero,
Yeah.
and now it's probably worth a small fortune. But
quite possibly, yeah.
I'll just start. I wonder who registered furlough.co.uk or furloughing.co. I'm going to go and have a look in a minute and make sure it's not one of those stupid ones. Right. So I'm conscious we've got 4 minutes left, and I'm going to throw a bit of a curveball at you, Luke.
Go for it.
So just give me some quick fire answers on I've got an accountancy practice in Peterborough. I want to be top of the Google search terms for accountants Peterborough or Peterborough accountants. Don't care which, both preferably. What things could I do in order to make sure that I am top of those search terms? What quick
Goodness
things can
me, we need more than 3 minutes. But I would look at the content you have on your site. So making sure you're getting some decent amounts of content there. A lot of people are reluctant to answer questions that people ask. That would be the first port of call, is understand those questions. You've got to make sure that you do feature the term accountants in Peterborough within your metadata, so that there's sort of all the page titles and things like that, so that Google knows that's actually what you are. Because you were talking about local SEO, I would focus on the Google My Business pages as well, optimization for Google Maps. So those are the things that at the moment are being underrepresented, because actually nobody's looking for those terms as much as they were before. So really good opportunity to focus on sort of the local SEO aspects at the moment, and then try to encourage good quality links back to your site, which is definitely not a 2-minute question, but it's trying to encourage people to link back to your site. If you're adding content, adding good value, people go, oh, that's interesting. And any link that you get back to your site shows Google that you are doing something good. It passes some authority to your site and gives you a better chance of ranking for that as well. And actually, Simon, you mentioned about some audits potentially for some of the members. Again, it might be something to have a look at. Can you give you a breakdown of some of those things that you can have a look at?
Brilliant, thank you. So what Luke was sort of referring to there is, if anybody's in one of the full groups where we meet bi-monthly or bi-weekly, depending on which group you are, then as we move on, Luke is going to do some free audits for people to give them some ideas, or for some members, in order to give them some ideas of things that they can implement and take away. So we just need to get that organised, Luke, don't we?
Yeah, cool.
That's brilliant. So I haven't got any more questions on the chat box. I haven't got any more. Just James, if you, for those that aren't members, how much is an audit, Luke? So
we haven't priced it up. I'd say just and to be fair, just drop us a note, and we'll see what we can do. We'll prioritise the members first, and James will I'm sure we'll be able to get to something at some point. It just might take a little bit longer because we prioritise the kind of the members first. Yeah, and was that Mark thanking James? All right, Mark. What? Jeez.
Yeah, Jason. If you email me, Jason, then I'll because I owe you a favour for one or two things. So if you email me, I might see if I can bend Luke's arm on your behalf. But anyway, if you want to send that through. James, if you want to put Luke's details in the chat box again, so if anybody wants to get in touch with Luke on LinkedIn, that would be great. Whilst James does that, I'll just share with you, I've got 3 webinars coming up next week. On Monday at 2:00, I'm talking to James Ashford from Go Proposal. And then on Tuesday at 9:30, I'm talking to Alex at Practice Ignition. So you can get an appreciation of both of those different software systems and the philosophies behind them. And then on Thursday morning at 9:30, I'm speaking to Steve Trister, and Steve Trister does all things video and communication and Zoom and technology and all that sort of stuff. So if you feel as though you're getting tired of Zoom, or what was it? What was your phrase, Luke?
I think it's called Zoom fatigue.
Zoom fatigue. Yeah, if you feel as though you're getting Zoom fatigue, or you fear that your customers are getting Zoom fatigue, then Steve is a definite one. I'm slightly nervous about the Steve one because you never quite know where that conversation's going to go. He's likely to turn up half naked or something stupid like that. But anyway, if you want to come to any of those webinars or online meetings, then if you're on the list, you'll get an email. Jeff says he's zoomed out. Then you feel free to come along. That just leaves me to say, 1 minute over now. That's because I've been waffling. 1 minute over. It just leaves me to say thank you very much, Luke, for coming along and sharing.
Pleasure.
If anybody's got any questions, connect with Luke, definitely on LinkedIn. He has some brilliant ideas. There's an idea around a conference thing that I just think is fantastic. So connect with Luke, you get lots more ideas. Thank you very much, Luke, for coming along. I am sure we will have you back. And my next job, or my first job next week, is to give you those dates for the
on the show. Got to get you on at some point
for the online show, and I will share that as well with everybody. Have a great weekend, everybody, and I will hopefully I'll see you at 9:30 on Monday. Thank you very much, Luke. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.